The K-9 froze, his body rigid, eyes locked on the abandoned house. Officers thought it was nothing, just another decaying building lost to time. But the dog refused to look away. Moments later, his instincts would uncover a nightmare hidden inside. 23 missing children, waiting in darkness, prayed for rescue.it was supposed to be a routine patrol. The officers had driven this route countless times, their K-9 partner trotting faithfully by their side. The night was unusually quiet, the kind of silence that made every small sound feel louder, sharper. Almost out of place, the patrol car rolled past a crumbling row of old houses. The German shepherd suddenly stiffened. His ears twitched, nose lifted, and then he froze. His eyes locked on one particular house, its paint long peeled, windows shattered, and roofs sagging under years of neglect. To the officers, it looked like every other forgotten structure in the neighborhood, but the K-9 sensed something different. He began to growl, low and steady, then pulled sharply at the leash. The lead officer frowned. This wasn't random curiosity. The dog was alert, focused, fixated on that house. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. Maybe it was a raccoon or some stray animal hiding inside. That was the simplest explanation, the one that made sense. Yet the dog's body language told a different story. His growl deepened, his paws digging into the ground as he strained toward the house. One officer chuckled nervously. "He's probably just spooked by the smell of something dead," he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. Another officer shook his head, watching the dog's intensity grow by the second. "No," he whispered. "This is different." The K-9 barked sharply, the sound echoing through the empty street. He pulled harder, eyes never leaving the house. The lead officer's stomach tightened. He'd worked with dogs long enough to know one thing. When they acted like this, you listened. Finally, he gave the order, "All right. We're going in." The creaking gate gave way with a metallic groan as the officers stepped onto the overgrown path. Weeds brushed against their boots, and the air carried the stench of rot. The K-9 pulled forward, every muscle in his body taut, guiding them straight to the sagging front door. With a push, the door swung open, releasing a stale, suffocating air that made their stomachs churn. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing peeling wallpaper, shattered glass, and furniture cloaked in years of dust. The silence inside was heavier than the night outside, like the house itself was holding its breath. The dog's nails clicked against the warped wooden floor as he led the way. His nose swept the ground, his growl returning in short bursts. Then, suddenly, he froze again. From somewhere deep within the house came a faint sound. A shuffle? A whisper? The officers raised their weapons, hearts pounding. They exchanged one last glance before pressing deeper into the decaying halls, following the dog who refused to turn back. Whatever secret this house held, it was waiting for them just beyond the next door. Their flashlights swept across the living room, illuminating scattered food wrappers and a pile of clothing far too small for adults. The lead officer felt his chest tighten. This house wasn't empty. Someone had been here. Recently, the K-9's growl deepened, pulling them toward the far corner of the room. There, behind a broken shelf, stood a heavy wooden door secured with a rusted padlock. The dog barked furiously, scratching at the frame with desperate urgency. The officers didn't hesitate. One swung his baton down, shattering the lock in a single blow. The door creaked open, revealing a set of narrow stairs descending into darkness. The smell of dampness and fear rose up to meet them. With weapons drawn, they followed the K-9 into the basement. At the bottom, their flashlights revealed a sight that froze them in place. 23 children, huddled together, their faces pale and hollow, eyes wide with terror. For a heartbeat, the room was silent. Then one child whimpered, and another burst into tears. The officers stood in stunned disbelief. The K-9, however, had no doubt. He wagged his tail softly, moving toward the children as if to tell them it was finally over. The room erupted in movement. Officers immediately called for backup, their voices sharp with urgency as radios crackled to life. Above them, heavy boots thundered on the old wooden floors as more units rushed inside. Within minutes, paramedics were on their way. The children clung to one another, their thin arms trembling, eyes darting with fear. Some were too weak to stand, while others flinched at every sound. The officers lowered their weapons, softening their voices. "You're safe now," one whispered, crouching down. The K9 stepped forward gently, his tail wagging in slow, reassuring arcs. A few children reached out, their tiny fingers brushing his fur as if finding comfort in his warmth. One by one, the children were guided upstairs, their small footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Outside, flashing red and blue lights painted the night as ambulances lined the street. Neighbors gathered, covering their mouths in shock as stretchers carried the rescued victims to safety. The K9 remained at the center of it all, his eyes never leaving the children. He had found them. He had saved them. And in that moment, everyone watching knew, this dog was more than a partner. He was a hero. News of the rescue spread like wildfire. By dawn, families began arriving at the hospital, their faces etched with fear and hope. One by one, the children were reunited with their parents. The halls echoed with cries, some of sorrow, but most of overwhelming relief. Mothers clutched their sons. Fathers wept openly as they held daughters they thought they'd never see again. The officers stood back, silently watching, exhaustion heavy in their bones. But the K9 sat proudly at their side, his ears alert, tail thumping softly against the floor. It wasn't long before reporters swarmed the scene, microphones flashing, headlines already calling him the hero dog. At a small press conference later that day, the police chief spoke firmly. This rescue would not have been possible without our K9 partner. His instincts saved 23 innocent lives. Cameras clicked as the dog was draped with a medal, his handler resting a proud hand on his collar. The crowd applauded. But the loudest praise came not from strangers, it came from the families. Parents knelt to stroke his fur, whispering words of gratitude. And though he couldn't understand their language, the K9's eyes said it all. His mission was complete. They say heroes wear collars too. Tonight, one dog's courage lit hope for 23 frightened souls. Because he wouldn't ignore what others dismissed, lives were saved. If this moved you, share it, like, subscribe, and remember, sometimes the smallest spark of loyalty can change the outcome for many.